Hello everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings, and this is book 2 of a trilogy by Jessica Day George. The first book was Princess of the Midnight Ball. This is the sequel. Now, the first book was the 12 Dancing Princesses, in which the magical kingdom which the princesses vanish off to is basically, evil fae who are trying to escape and probably take over the world. In this one, we get the fairy tale of Cinderella, but in this case, the fairy godmother is actually the bad guy. See, one of the most interesting things in this is a sequel to the first one, because what happens is one of the princesses from Princess of the Midnight Ball, there being 12 of them, goes on what is in effect supposed to be a political visit to another country. That is, she and her sisters are from not Germany, and she has been sent to not England. In order to... This is one of those alternate reality history things where, because magic is real, everything is named slightly differently, but it's basically Europe. Anyway, so she is on a... it's effectively supposed to be a goodwill visit to this other country, because there was an extremely lengthy war between not Germany and not Spain, and then there was the issue with the 12 princesses, and because the king had requested, princes to help figure out this issue, and all of the princes who came had died, it's put them in an extremely precarious position politically with everybody else in the region, because there are people who think that they basically arranged for the murder of princes of foreign lands, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of concern. So she's there, and basically part of what happens in this is the fact that she has all of this experience with the King Underhill, because of all of those years spent dancing with his sons, who he was going to marry off to the girls in order to allow them to escape. But in this case, her experience allows her to tell when Eleonora, who has taken to going by Eleanor, that she has been effectively caught up in some sort of dark magic. The interesting thing, of course, as you read this, is that the Corey, who is the wicked the fairy godmother, who is the bad guy character, it turns out in the course of this book that the Corey arranged for Cinderella, arranged for her family to be ruined, thus forcing the young woman to enter into service. That is, this is a vaguely 17th, 18th century Europe period. So a young woman, especially a young woman of the upper classes, doesn't have a lot of options if, the family loses all of their wealth and so on and so forth. This is a young woman who doesn't have the option of getting a job, and because she is nobility, would not have been trained to a job. And there aren't a lot of respectable positions for women who want to get work, and so she's basically forced into taking up a position as a maid. And the Corey does something that is diabolically clever, which is that she basically makes it so that nothing Eleonora tries will work when she's in service. That is, at one point in the book, Eleonora is, asked, what, you're not doing this on purpose? And she says, no, I fold something and I turn around and it's just become unfolded. I walk down the hallway and trays and plates literally leap off of the tray. That people think that she is pitching a fit and being a spoiled brat about, doing the work, but it is in point of fact that no matter what she does, that she will have an iron, like a clothes iron for smoothing down clothing, and it will have not been put anywhere near the fire. It will not have been hot, and all of a sudden it will be hot and burning things. And she has no explanation for this because, you have an iron, you expect that it's not going to become hot until you put it on a hot thing to heat it up. And so it spontaneously heating is just perplexing, and in effect, it's like she's suffering from a curse. And the reason the Corey did this is so that when she shows up and tells Eleonora, I am your dear fairy godmother, I am here to help you, Eleonora is so desperate. She's desperate and seeking for some way to fix this problem, to have some sort of life, to stop being let go and kicked out and treated as though she's somehow doing this deliberately, that having a fairy godmother come lunging out of nowhere is just a relief, and she doesn't care enough to ask, well, where were you for the last, 10 years? Where were you when everything fell apart? Why are you showing up now? And she doesn't ask that question. And she doesn't ask, why do you want these things, and why aren't you just, giving me letting me live with you in your lovely palace or whatever. That none of these questions get asked because she is just so desperate for someone to help her. Because the problem is that with all of this time that she has spent with things falling apart around her, people think that she's doing it deliberately, and so nobody's willing to help her because, well, the clothes not being folded and getting ash on absolutely everything, and all of the burned clothes from irons left sitting on things, all of this stuff, that it happens so much and so often that people just assume she must be doing it deliberately or out of sheer unabated carelessness. And so she doesn't have any allies. And the Corley has made this happen to drive her to the point where she will not question anything. So you have this whole period in the book where she is just, triumphantly enjoying finally getting to wear pretty dresses and go to the ball and have people care about her and pay attention to her and so on. And she doesn't question anything. In the meantime, you have our protagonist, Poppy, who can see that something is wrong because one of the things the Corley has done is to effectively put a spell on practically the entire court, so that all of the men will be lusting after Eleonora, who calls herself Lady Ella, to conceal who she actually is, and a spell to make all of the young women be bitter and jealous and angry and so on and so forth. It's basically warping everything that's going on around it, and Poppy, who has magical protections on her, is able to see that everybody's acting strangely, especially the young man who is courting her cousin and who had no, eyes for nobody but Poppy's cousin until all of a sudden Lady Ella's on the scene, and none of it made any sense. So we have Poppy watching this and being able to tell that something is wrong and figuring out that Lady Ella is Eleonora, and basically it becomes a matter of solving the mystery of exactly who is helping Eleonora, of figuring out, who all the players are and what they want. And at the end of it, of course, they defeat this, and they are all freed from, the Corley's grasp, and so on and so forth. Um, and at the end of it, we have what I feel is an interesting, almost just a sort of a delicate nod to people who complain about fairy tales and, oh, she's only known him for a week, well, they shouldn't be in love already, and so on. That she sort of has this ending where Poppy, the prince, the Danish prince has basically proposed marriage, and Poppy says, I'm 16 and we've only known each other for a month. And the prince says, okay, well then, would you like to spend a summer at my castle? And, Poppy agrees, and it's fairly implicit that this is supposed to still be a happily ever after and they will get engaged as soon as possible, but a delicate nod to anybody who might be upset by, oh, you've only known him for such a short time and you're only 16. As though princesses in the, 18th, 17th century wouldn't have been married at 16 to a prince. Really. But anyways, so it's an interesting take. I do enjoy the slight twisting on the fairy tale, again, that you have this character of the fairy godmother who is normally the person who is doing the rescue, and turning her into a villain. I think it's a nice inversion. I also like that, in Princess of the Midnight Ball, you have this whole side issue of a high-ranking member of the church coming to the country and putting it under interdict because he's a witch hunter and so on and so forth. And, it adds a certain amount of real-world strife. But, to an extent, I like the simplicity of this one where we have one antagonist, we have one bad guy, we have one villain, and, everybody else is just working towards Ella spends some time as an antagonist, if only because she is just so bitter and angry and desperate and willing to do whatever she has to do in order to get something, because that's the thing about her, is that one gets the feeling that she might have actually been fine going into service if the Corley had allowed her to develop her skills and learn how to be a maid and exist in the world, that she wouldn't have had a problem, but that the Corley's intervention specifically ruined everything for her, including any chance she had to make friends, because, of course, no matter what she did, everything would get screwed up so that other maids were constantly having to make up for whatever work she had tried to do, thus increasing their workloads and making their lives harder just because she's there. Anyways, so I like this one. I've liked the Jessica Day George books that she's written, and I will get to the third one in due course of this particular trilogy, because there is a third one. I said it was a trilogy. And yeah, I think that's all that I have to say, so that's everything, and I will see you all next week.